So my name is Sheila Siemens. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the director of the Noyo Center here, and I welcome you to one of our talks. I am happy to have this talk scheduled. We've wanted to do a King Tides talk for quite some time because I think it's such an important project that gets little notice up here, I think. Largely, I think people feel that we are really not going to be affected that much by sea level rise because we have such tall cliffs and we don't have, you know, a lot of the perils that you see in the Florida Keys or even the Bay Area around the Bay. But, you know, these king tides really do show where our vulnerabilities are. And obviously a big one is, you know, the harbor. And I just went to walk my dogs down in Navarro Beach, you know, a week or so ago, and it was flooded on a regular tide, and you know, it happens at Van Dam too. So I think it really is showing us where our vulnerabilities are as we move forward in sea level rise science. And I remember, you know, I've been doing this for quite some time, and I remember the discussions about sea level rise predictions based on various models, and there was quite a range of what they thought could be the kind of rise that we were going to see. And unfortunately, even though we were expecting it to be sort of in that middle of those ranges, I think for a long time, we're really seeing it's coming out on the higher side of what the predictions were. So it's really great to welcome Annie Frankel here. She's working at the Coastal Commission and is in charge of the King Tides Project, trying to document what we're seeing around the state when we have these big tides. I'm always of two minds because it's an exciting thing. Like these tides that come up and they're so big are kind of exciting and event feeling, but they also are foretelling. And I think that there's some seriousness about our ongoing planning here and how we can continue to do things safely as we move forward with sea level rise. So with that, I will welcome Annie. Let me just say, I will, the way that we normally do this is if you look in your upper right hand corner, there's a view option and you can put it on speaker view. Annie will take over the screen with her presentation. I ask folks to put their questions in the chat bar. So at the very bottom is some options for you, and there's a chat function. If it's appropriate during the talk, I will break in with your question and ask Annie. If not, we'll just wait till the end and give her the questions at the end. We will also have a more informal dialogue period at the end where you can ask her some more questions. So during the talk, if you could keep yourself muted, that would be great. I will do the same so you don't hear my dogs barking. And we'll ask her questions if they're appropriate. Okay, is that okay with you, Annie? To keep it.
That sounds fine. And I have a couple moments where I'll ask questions too.
Okay, great. All right. So with that, why don't you take over and teach us about king tides?
Okay, can you see that? King Tides picture?
Yeah, you're great.
Okay. All right, so thank you very much. I really appreciate this time from the Noyo Center and the time that all of you are giving me to learn about this project.
Hey Annie, your video, your audio is going out a little bit. Maybe
all right.
Leaning back.
I put a piece of paper there. I will how's that sound?
That's much better. Yeah.
Okay. So the California King Tides Project is part of an international effort asking people to photograph the highest tides of the year. And we asked them to do this because photographing these tides and their impact on our beaches, our wetlands, our cultural sites, our roads, our other coastal infrastructure helps California plan for sea level rise in order to protect the people and the places that are important to us. Let's see. There we go. So what are king tides? King tides are natural. They're predictable. it's not a scientific term, but it's what we call the highest high tides of the year. They're the most extreme tides of the year. So not only the highest high tides, but also the lowest low tides. And there's a number of factors that come together to make that happen. It's when the sun, the moon, and the earth are all lined up. Therefore, the sun and the moon are amplifying the gravitational pull on the ocean. Also, the moon is a little bit closer than usual to the earth. And around the new year, the earth is a little bit closer to the sun. So all those things come together to give us stronger tides. Also in California, in the wintertime, you're more likely to see those offshore storms or wind events, which can further push the water up the shore. But the King Tides Project is a little like a snapshot. We're collecting information about a moment in time every year. So king tides are about 1 to 2 feet higher than the average tide that we see throughout the year. And that is about what we're expecting to see in terms of sea level rise in California over the next few decades. So during a king tide, when you see beaches underwater or roads flooded, it helps to think about what it will be like when the water level is at least as high every single day, and higher when there's a king tide or a storm. So it's very helpful that way. So as I just said, these pictures help us visualize the impacts of future sea level rise. They also help us document current flood risk. So what's vulnerable right now? What's flooding now? That's important to understand. They help scientists ground truth and validate their models, like their sea level rise maps. And something that I think is really important is they get us talking about climate change. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But let's, why would we be talking about climate change? That's because the sea level rise that we're talking about is a result of climate change. So I want to step back for just a moment and make sure that we all have the same baseline understanding of the basic causes of climate change and the resulting sea level rise. If you were at the February lecture with Adam from the Marine Mammal Center, some of this may be a refresher for you. But the next few slides are drawings by artist Maris Wicks. She created them for the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation as an effort to come up with an easy to understand explanation for this phenomenon. So when we burn fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas, we are releasing rampant levels of carbon dioxide into our atmosphere, and that's a heat trapping gas. That carbon dioxide acts like a heat trapping blanket around the planet. We need that blanket. That's really important to a planet that's warm enough for us to live here. But as we burn more fossil fuels, we're adding more and more carbon dioxide, effectively thickening that blanket and heating up our air, our land, and our water. And that causes sea level rise in a couple main ways. So one of those ways is that when water heats up, it takes up more space. So as the oceans are getting warmer, they're taking up more volume, and that's causing the sea level to rise. The other main reason is that as our world heats up, we're melting our land-based glaciers and sea ice. And as that ice melts, it flows into the ocean, so it's adding more water to the ocean, again, increasing sea level rise. So currently our understanding is that as we are looking at the next few decades, the next couple decades, the sea level rise that we're going to see is pretty much baked in. But as we look further out, like to the end of the century, it really depends on how much of that ice is melting. We may see as much as 10 feet of sea level rise if we have extensive melting of polar ice. And ultimately, the amount of sea level rise that we see is dependent on how quickly we stop burning fossil fuels. So I'm going to see if I can get this video to work for you. And there's no sound on the video, so I'm going to talk through it. And if you have the little thumbnails on your right, you might want to move them if they're blocking. It might make it hard to see all of the video. So I'll give you a second if anyone wants to hide those or move them to the bottom. So this is a visualization of the concentration of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And so if you look at the graph on the left, the y-axis is carbon dioxide parts per million, and the x-axis is the latitude, so where on the planet this data was collected. So the red dot is from Hawaii, and the graph on the right is showing you just that data over time. We started at 1979, and we're working toward present day. The blue dot was collected at the South Pole, and then there's lots of other gray dots that came from all over the world, and you can see that in the little map inset. So you see there's seasonal variations, but there is a very discernible movement upward over time in terms of the concentration of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. So we'll watch what happens as we get closer to present day. And as we get closer, it's going to start giving us data from previous to 1979 on the right. So here we go. If you watch that chart on the right, that green line is from the Keeling curve data, which is collected by Scripps. And then further back in time, we are getting data from ice cores. So scientists drill holes in old ice, and then they analyze the air bubbles to get information about how much carbon dioxide was in the atmosphere when that ice was first frozen. So we're seeing data as we go back 1,000 years before the Common Era from different ice cores. And this is going to take us back to 800,000 years ago. So let's see. So I find this very powerful. It shows us not only that the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is so far beyond what we've seen since well before human society was formed, human civilization, but also how extraordinary the rate of change is, how quickly in the last about 150 years, we have increased the concentration of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And I'm happy to share this link with you if you'd like to take a closer look at it later. So that is the basis behind what we're seeing globally and what's projected for the future in terms of the causes of sea level rise and what we expect. But bringing it back to the King Tides project, we are asking the public to take notice of the world, and in particular, the intersection between the ocean and the land for all those reasons that I mentioned before. Oops, there we go. So this is our website. And if it's blocked for you, it says california.kingtides.net. And that's the shortcut to take you to the website. So on that website, you can find the high tide time near you for King Tides. You can upload your King Tides photos. You can explore maps of all of the King Tides photos that have been contributed over the last few years. And if you're a teacher or a parent, you can find a pretty extensive collection of educational resources to help teach and learn about King Tides and sea level rise. So this season, we had King Tides in November and December. And then we have 2 more days of king tides for the California coast north of Point Conception. So Mendocino County is definitely north of Point Conception. That's in Santa Barbara County. So 2 more days, January 11th and 12th. So next Monday and Tuesday, most of you who are watching have that opportunity to observe and participate in this community science project. So to get into the specifics of how you participate, there are a couple of ways that you can contribute king tides photos. So one of the ways is to download a free app called Survey 123. It's available in all the app stores. And there are detailed instructions on the website on how to download that app and access our king tide survey on the app. The other way is just to go to the website, and you can upload photos directly using the web browser. So this shows you here some of that photo upload survey. So one of the most important things is that we need to know where your photo was taken. So if you're using a smartphone, we want to make sure that your location services are on for your camera app. That's usually the default, but if for privacy reasons you've gone in and turned that off, we do ask that before you take your king tides photos, you turn it on. And that's because we take the photos and we put them on a map. And we really want to be as accurate as we can when we're placing your photo. We want to get it as close to the place where you took it as possible. So as you can see here, we want to know the date. We want to know the time you took your photo, and ideally you're taking it within about a half an hour on either side of the peak high tide time, if possible, because then we know that your photo is a good representation of what the high tide looked like that day. Also, you can see that there's a map. So this map, you can zoom in and place a point pretty precisely where you took your photo. So that can be a double check of the geographic data that came along with your photo if you had your location services on. If you didn't have your location services on, or if you took your photo with a digital camera that doesn't have that geolocating function, this gives you a way to tell us exactly where your photo was taken. There's an optional field to include any other description you want to include. So you could tell us about the weather, or you could tell us animal behavior you observe, or people behavior you observe, or if you want to reflect on what looks different from how this place usually looks, you can give us that information. And then there's also an optional place to put your email. You do not have to give us an email. You don't have to give us any personal information whatsoever. You don't have to create an account. You don't have to log in. But if you do give us an email, a couple benefits to that is that if I have questions, I can contact you. And also at the end of each King Tides series, I try to email everybody who gave an email address and say, your photo's on the map. You know, if there's any problems, let me know and I'll correct them. But you do not have to give any personal information. So this is what the map looks like. You can see it's a really photo forward platform. The photos are really big here. And then on the left, you can see I've zoomed into Humboldt Bay. And these photos are publicly available. So anybody can go and download the photo to use for a report, for research, for teaching, for a newspaper article. They are available for the public to use. And you can see on the left that what the data looks like that is posted along with the photo. If you give us your email address, it will not go up here. We don't include that personal information on the public map. But all the other information comes from you. So I want to give you briefly a little bit of history about the California King Tides Project. It was founded in 2010 by Marina Saros and Sarah Amanzada as a partnership among federal, state, local government, and nonprofits, and it's still that today. So for the first about 6 years of the project, we asked people to upload their photos to Flickr. So there's this California King Tides Project group on Flickr, and you can find the link on our website. And you can see there's still almost 3,000 photos there, and they're available to browse. There are a lot of beautiful photos there. There were a few reasons why we decided to switch to this new process of data collection. One is that you have to create an account, you have to give them an email and personal information to join Flickr. And we just felt like that was a barrier. It's a better procedure to not have to do that. Also, for students, it's easier for them not to have to give you their email address if they want to participate. And we do encourage young people to participate. And so that was one reason. Another is photographers really love Flickr, and there are many beautiful photos there, but one of the reasons they love it is that when you upload a photo, you can set the license for the photo. So you can choose to be public domain, or you can choose to have all rights reserved, or several choices in between those two ends of the spectrum. But the default is all rights reserved, which means that if you didn't know you could change the license, or if you just didn't understand the project, there are a lot of photos where we don't have easy use or of these photos. And we really want this to be community available public information that's helpful to everybody. And thirdly, the geographic data is not as easily visible and available on Flickr. And we really felt like getting these photos mapped would make them the most useful for a variety of uses and audiences. So when you go to california.kingtides.net, it redirects you, it takes you to our pages, which are living on the Coastal Commission's website. About 5 years ago, the California Coastal Commission took the lead role on the California King Tides project. And in regular years, it is still very much a partnership. In regular years, there are dozens of local organizations, local municipalities who hold events for their community, such as nature walks or scientific lectures or photo meetups. I think we had close to 60 last year local events. So this year was very different. There weren't that many on the ground events. We have had several great virtual events such as this, but hopefully by next winter, we'll also be able to gather in person as well as online. So the next slides that you'll be seeing, they are all photos that were contributed this season. So in November and December to the California King Tides project. I want to talk a little bit about what makes a good King Tides photo. So it's important when you're taking a King Tides photo that there's some sort of reference in the photo so that we can understand how high the water is, right? So whether that's a road, whether that's a building, if it's a flooded sidewalk or street, we need something to help us understand what the water level is, or what the impact of the water level is. So if you're on the shoreline, one way to do that is to take your photo looking upstream or up coast or down coast, so that you can see the back of a bluff or the foot of a bluff or a seawall, or you can have a pier or even a beach access stairway, something that's fairly permanent and stable so that you can compare, for example, two photos of the same place and see what's different. And that's better than if you're standing on the beach, taking a photo directly out into the waves, and a photo of waves crashing on the sand, for example, which may be a gorgeous photo, but it's not going to give us good data for this project. This was a photo that blew me away. This is Humboldt County from last month. So I pulled out several photos that came in from Mendocino County, and it's possible some of you watching were the ones who took these photos, and if that's true, you know, feel free to shout out or raise your hand. But these are good photos because we can see how high the water is, and you know, in some cases you can see there's no sandy beach. It's totally inundated by these high tides, or we can see how far the water is coming next to the bluffs or the headlands. or how big a lagoon is that's formed on these high tide days. And offshore rocks are also a good reference point to see how high the water is. And if these are places where you visit regularly, you may really be able to notice big differences on a king tide day from how it usually looks. I would love to get more king tides photos from the North Coast, from Mendocino, Sonoma County. We really need more photos from those areas. And hopefully some of you will be available and inspired to go take photos on Monday and Tuesday. So coming back out again from king tide specifically to the larger issue of climate change and global warming, I wanted to share a little bit about this annual survey that's done every year. This organization surveys US adults about their understanding of and perception of global warming and climate change. And the most recent survey was from April 2020. And they found that 72% of US adults think global warming is happening right now. So that's not bad. That's a good number of US adults. And now I want to ask you a question. When was the last time that you had a conversation about climate change with family, friends, coworkers, neighbors? And if you're comfortable putting it in the chat, please do. I'm not sure I can see the chat right now where I am, but I'll trust that some of you are doing it.
I will report to you if they come up. I have the chat open.
Okay.
Art said today. I was going to say this weekend when I was with my family, we talked about it. Karen says today.
Great. And I imagine you're a little bit of a self-selecting group. But,
somebody said yesterday.
As you were planning this program. Yes. Okay.
I think it is something that we talk about fairly frequently in this group for sure. But what about that graph, that video with the data? That's one of the best things I've seen in a long time. My gosh, that was good. So I don't know how to answer Lori's question about high waves affecting photo validity, but one of the things that we used to do when we would submit photos to the king tides was a kind of you do a before and after, like what does it look like normally, and then what does it look like during king tide. I don't know that they do that anymore. We'll ask Lori, we'll ask Annie when she comes back, but if she comes back, but I think something that gives some reference is a great idea, and it's hard with like the Spring Ranch photo. That's hard to tell really what's going on there under any circumstance. That could be any kind of tide, it looked like to me. But I think what we should do, team of people that are here, is come up with a king tides team, and we all take a specific location and go every time there's a king tide. Commit to going to that spot and uploading some pictures, so we can maybe we have 3 or 4 people going to different places in the harbor and a number of other places. We can try. Yeah, we can try to put together a little citizen science team that.
There she is.
Wasn't that exciting?
Yes. Why would we expect today would be smooth?
I love and respect you all. I'm glad I wasn't on Mad Out or something, but let me try and get back. I'm so sorry. The computer just shut itself down. I hope that doesn't happen again.
Okay, you gave us a chance to brainstorm creating our King Tides team. We've already named it.
Great, that's great.
We're gonna get our volunteers organized to take pictures at specific locations so we can be more intentional.
Okay, so let me see if I can, I'm on the current slide and I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Okay. It's fun. No.
Sharing? Oh, there you go.
Okay, but it's not a slideshow, right?
It is. It was seeing one of your slides. It's, yeah, there you go.
The full screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Boy, where were we? I'm sorry. I hope it doesn't happen again. If it happens again,
We were telling you that we discuss climate change all the time.
And you did it just now. Okay, so this survey, which was done in April, they found that 35%, only 35% of US adults occasionally discuss global warming. So not that many, but also only 25% of US adults see global warming in the media at least once a week, which is a pretty small amount considering that this is such a globally important issue. And I want to ask you a second question. And while you do this, I'm going to play with my cord a little bit. But do you think that climate change has or will harm you personally? Just take a second to think about that. And if you're comfortable putting anything in the chat, please do. Okay. Okay. So, and if someone wants to share their story, elaborate, I would welcome it. But I will say that I feel like I am a pretty privileged person, but as the fires in California have the fire season has gotten longer and more horrible every summer, I feel like that has personally impacted me. We were huddling in our house for a month this summer, and I've lived in California most of my life and never experienced fire seasons like we have over the last few years. So for me, that alone is already impacting my life. If anyone else would like to share, please do.
Yeah, if you would like to share personally, feel free to do that. Annie, one of the things we talk a lot about here is the kelp crisis that we're dealing with as an organization and the climate drivers that impacted that. So the fires, definitely we get air quality concerns, but we're also looking at some really dramatic changes in our fisheries, both commercial and recreational, from many climate driven sources. That's impacting us pretty personally.
So in that survey, 43% of US adults think that it will harm them personally. And I really feel like if we look back at this, the 25% hearing about it in the media once a week and 43% feeling like it's harming them personally, I think there's a lot of feedback between those two responses. The media covers things that people are concerned about, and people get concerned about things they see in the media. So I think those things are really feeding off each other. But as we think about the impact of climate change, we do need to recognize that people and communities with fewer resources and histories of being oppressed are going to have a harder time responding to and adapting to this changing world. So when we think about, who has the funds and physical ability to move if they need to because of fires or hurricanes or floods, who can get an air purifier or install and run an air conditioner, who can adjust when the land or the coastal waters that they depend on no longer support them. So speaking as somebody who works for the government, but also for all of us, ensuring that the most vulnerable are at the table and part of the decision-making process as we plan for this future changing world is really vitally important to justice. And climate change, sea level rise can be really scary, and it is really scary, but whenever we have change, it's also can be an opportunity to recreate our reality into something that might be better. So if you, in that spirit, the Coastal Commission is hosting a video challenge for middle and high school students, asking them to create short videos answering the question, what does climate justice look like to me? And the deadline is the end of March. So if you have young people in your life who you think would be interested, please share this with them. We hope that we can get some really creative, maybe positive, who knows, videos from our youth, because adults in the world right now really need that. We need their vision, and we often need their pressure to do what needs to be done to look toward a better future. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we get from California's kids. So that surveys that I was talking about, they are produced by the Yale program on climate change communication, and this is their website, climatecommunication.yale.edu. And they also do this other survey called Global Warming 6 Americas, and it's based on a very short list of questions. You can take it yourself on their website. It takes less than a minute to answer. And based on the responses, they put people into one of 6 categories in terms of their response to climate change and global warming. So the questions that I showed you in the map, they ask a lot of other questions, and you can go online, you can explore them all. You can drill down to the state level, to the county, to the congressional district. It's really fascinating for me to look at that and look at the geographic differences in our understanding of and response to this issue. But the questions that I pulled out for you, they really haven't changed that much over the last 5 years or so, maybe 2 to 3 percentage points. Whereas this project, since 2014, the alarmed category has tripled. And the farthest on the left, the dismissive category, has decreased by half. So this one has had some really big, quick changes over time. And so in general, the adults in the United States are becoming they're understanding climate change more, they're becoming more alarmed and concerned about it, and more interested in taking action to address it, which is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. So again, this is the website, california.kingtides.net. And as I said, we have 2 more days for you of King Tides this season on Monday and Tuesday. And I went ahead and pulled out the tide times for Noyo Harbor. Monday, the high tide is about 8:45, and on Tuesday, it's about 9:30. So the King Tides Project, we're only soliciting high tide photos. That's what we want to map because of the sea level rise visualization purpose. But we also, if you go on the website, you'll also find the low tide tides. And these are extreme low tides as well as the extreme high tides. So these are great times to go out and go tide pooling, or take a walk on a wide beach, or take beautiful photos for your own, Instagram or whatever. We don't need them, but if you share them on social media, we may reshare them because that is part of the King Tides days. So I do want to, I heard from some of you before this started that there have been some injuries and recent deaths along the coast in Mendocino. And that's a big part of this, is remembering that the ocean is powerful and we need to give it the respect it deserves. And for many of you who live near the coast, you know that very well. So, but just always being aware of where you are in relation to the waves, in relation to bluff tops or slippery rocks. It's never worth your safety to get a great King Tides photo. as well as we're in the time of COVID. So please do follow all those safety precautions of masking up and staying distant from people outside of your household if you do go out and participate in this project. But that is my email address down there, annie.frankel@coastal.ca.gov. Again, I'm very available to answer questions or to talk more about this project after this, and I'm happy to answer your questions now. So thank you very much for giving me this time to talk about the project, for spending some time with us. Thank you to the Noyo Center, and I'm sorry about my technical difficulties earlier. Hopefully I will stay connected until the end now. So thanks very much.
Well, thanks, Annie. That was great. I'm glad we got you back. I was worried that we were going to lose you for good, but super exciting, and it's a great conversation. Great conversation to be having right now. How come the king tide is only north of Point Conception, right? For this next one coming up, what is that all about?
Yeah, I can't give you all the scientific details, but if you look at the map of California, there are big changes in the ocean behavior and currents when you're south of Point Conception in the Southern California Bight. You get warmer water. It's just there's a change in currents. There's a change in where we are on the planet in relation to the moon. It just happens that in January, the tides that we're seeing north of Point Conception in some places are just about as high as they were in December, whereas below that, they really aren't. They're not that special. So this is the first time where we've had that, and it's a little hard to communicate, but just how it is.
That is fascinating. I know it's a whole different oceanographic regime for sure, but that's interesting. We'll definitely get some photos for you this time, so keep an eye out. We'll put some up.
Great.
Monday and Tuesday. Yeah, Wendy, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. You actually brought it up while Annie was gone, but it was my question too, is how useful are the photos just by themselves without seeing what it's normally like? I don't know what a normal high tide would be, but for comparison.
Yeah, so I will not say that there are a lot of examples where we can look at the photos from 2010 and look at the photos from 2020 and see a real obvious change from the king tides photo. There's so much difference based on the weather that it's hard to look at these photos right now and see that change. They are very useful for just seeing, standalone each year, what is vulnerable right now, and what is going to be vulnerable with the sea level rise. So each photo in itself can be very helpful. And for example, coastal commission planners use these to learn about places where they maybe have permits or that there's planning happening. And they help local governments also. Local governments are all in this situation right now where they need to be thinking about sea level rise, how they're going to manage it, what their plans are for the future. And these photos are very useful for that same reason for them. I'm interested to see, I think as we go forward over, maybe the next 10 years, if we continue to do this, and I think we will, we may start to be able to see that trend line. That's not necessarily a positive thing to look forward to, but I think as we go forward, we will be able to see evidence of that.
So Annie, is it best if we're more intentional, like we go to the same spot and try to take the same picture each time? Is that ideal? Areas where we see dramatic implications from higher tides?
Yeah, that can be useful. Especially, I encourage, for instance, if you're a classroom teacher and you want to do this as a project, that can be a great thing to do. Each year have your students be photographing the same place. So for that purpose, that is a good thing to do. For a lot of people I work with will often, depending on which department they're in, they may say, we want to see photos that show infrastructure impacts, right? So if there's a road that floods, if there's a seawall that's getting breached, that's what they want to see. If there's a water quality impact or water quality treatment plant or something like that that's being impacted. Our ecologist wants to see what the wetlands look like, so there are a lot of different things that you can get from these pictures depending on where you take. And it's a low ask community science project. And that's one of the things that I think is really great about it. So often I'll say, look, just go somewhere that's convenient to you or someplace that's important to you, someplace you care about to make these observations, to pay attention to how it's changing, and to share that with others. I think that that's probably a good enough reason to choose where you go and photograph.
All right, you have a couple questions in the chat. Somebody has asked a couple of times, how do high waves affect the photo validity?
Yeah, so not negatively. I mean, this is a reality. Sometimes you're going to have a coinciding storm event with a king tide, and it's going to be higher because of it. So we are glad to see that. It's not, it's not a bad thing in terms of the data. Certainly on a still day, like that will tell us if we're having sunny day floods, which if you watch the news, Miami and Boston, there's a lot of places that are getting these sunny day floods where there's no storm whatsoever, and it's really just the tide. And as we see more sea level rise on the California coast, we may get more of that. But we're collecting whatever it looks like during the king tide. We want to see it.
So to give you an example of an issue that we're facing here is on the mill site, for instance, we have that berm that's holding, that is along the one beach in Fort Bragg. Well, not the Pocket Beach, it's Glass Beach, but Soldiers Bay, right? So we have this berm there that's holding back supposedly the ocean from what's behind it, which is contaminated soils. And one of the things that people are most concerned about when we're debating what to do with the remediation of the mill site is that combination of a bad storm surge with a king tide or a very high tide. That's the sort of perfect storm of things that will really impact those upstream, up coast soils to move and maybe even start to erode away some of the riprap and the walls. So those are the issues that I think we'd like to start keeping a better documentation on. Like I would like to see at each of the king tides, what does that beach look like? So if we get a picture of that berm in it with, during one of these king tide events, I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see year after year.
And that's, I feel like a lot of this project, it does serve what is the local interest and what's the local need. So you can be tracking that using this broader database, having a place to store that and record it and go back to it. So, I mean, in some places, what I've been hearing more and more about is the concern that the sea level rise pushing up the groundwater. So I don't know if that's an issue for, Mendocino, for example, but
It is. We have saltwater intrusion into the Fort Bragg water supply during the really high tides. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in some cases that may not have been evident if you were looking at a sea level rise map, right? You're not flooding because of above ground water, but the water may be coming up underneath. And so we have gotten photos of water coming up through manhole covers and things like that. So even those photos, if you see some evidence of that, that's something great to capture and learn from.
Okay, Leah's asking if the California shelf has anything to do with why king tides are happening above Point Conception.
I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that.
All right.
My understanding is it's a combination of things. It is the change in the geography and for the most part, and the currents as a result of the change in the geography.
All right. Well, what is the next thing on the state as far as sea level rise planning goes? So can you give us a kind of a general idea of what's happening?
Oh, I should have come prepared with that. We just had a local government workshop that brought together local government officials to talk about sea level rise planning. The commission has a sea level rise guidance document out right now. And the commission has been giving local government grants to do sea level rise planning and planning for their local coastal plans. And that's been a pretty big financial support in an effort to help counties and cities just move forward on this.
Prepare, yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Great. Well, so anyone else have any questions for Annie for the good of the order? Well, so I want to thank you so much, Annie, for coming. I know it's been a big day, and it was great for you to share this program with us. We will definitely move forward with more effort here. This is something I think we've wanted to do for a while, and we have so many people, especially this year, right, that have wanted to help us out and volunteer with Noyo Center, and we haven't been able to engage volunteers. And this is a great thing to get people to help us do, and they can do it safely during this COVID crisis. So we will definitely get out on Monday and Tuesday and take some pictures. Thank you all for coming. Of course, support the Noyo Center if you can, so we can continue having events like this and continue to bring education to the coast. We appreciate everybody. It's been a tough year, but we've made it through and we're strong. So we look forward to a lot of good talks coming up. Wendy, do you have the next one scheduled, or are we still working on that?
Still working on it.
Yeah, all right. So we're still working on the February talk, but we're going to also have quite a lineup of talks for Whale Festival, which we expect is going to be virtual. March is the Whale Festival weeks. So keep your ears out, because we'll put a lot of good talks in for that as well. So thanks, Annie. We appreciate it so much. I hope to see you again soon in person. Come up and visit us.
Thank you. Thank you.